Well, hello everybody and welcome. You have tuned in to episode number 409 of Linux in the Ham Shack, the most terrific amateur radio podcast on the internet. And today is our deep dive episode, and we have an interesting deep dive episode. We're going to talk about a software package that we have only mentioned in a cursory way in the past. Have not really discussed it at length, but we will definitely do that today. And then we have the members of an organization that we will talk about when we get to them, but we're going to talk about the software first. But before we get to that, I'm going to introduce everybody so everybody knows what's going on. And you may have at first noticed that I'm the only voice you're hearing from the show so far, and that's because Bill, NE4RD, and Cheryl, W5MOO, will not be here with us today. This is going to be handled entirely by me because we're recording at an odd day and odd time, and I'm the only one that apparently who's awake right now. So we'll go ahead. We'll call it that to make it sound better. And we'll introduce our guest for today. The first one we have is the author of the deep dive that we're going to talk about today, and that is JS8Call. And that is Jordan Sherer, KN4CRD. So thanks very much, Jordan, for being here. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to chatting.
All right, fantastic. And then we have three other people, and you'll find out who they are a little bit later on, or at least what they do a little bit later on, but let's find out who they are. The first is Klaus Niesen, AE0S. Good afternoon, Klaus.
Thanks, Russ, for inviting us to the show.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's good to have you. And we also have Kun Lin, N7DMR. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. We really appreciate it. And then, for those of you who have listened to the show for a while, you may recognize this voice. He was a past co-host of this very program. And he's back again to talk about BSD and the Ham Shack. Now, unfortunately, that may never happen, but we'll see. But welcome back, Rich, K0EB. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I got that machine right here, so maybe I'll get it fired up someday. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, that'd be great. So anyway, we'll find out what Klaus, Kuhn, and Rich are doing here a little bit later on in the program, but let's talk to Jordan first and get a little bit of background on him, and then dive right into JS8Call. So Jordan, if you would, just give us a quick rundown on like what your background is, and maybe as a hobbyist or your work background or amateur radio background or anything that sort of led you down the path that got us to JS8Call, the topic of the day.
Definitely. So I've been a ham for a couple of years. I don't know when that was, maybe 2017. I'm not really remembering what year that was, but I haven't been ham for very long. But when I did get started, I got really interested into digital modes, and that kind of set me off on my journey. My background is in software. I've been a software engineer for a long time. I'm currently working on a company called Zapier, does some really cool workflow stuff. I'm leading a couple teams there. And so I've always been interested in mixing technology, different technologies, and how it can be useful in different ways. And so ham was just one way that I could explore that. I've always been a tinkerer, always taking things apart and putting them back together. Started, using Linux when I was really young. Actually, my first PGP key, my encryption key, I saw that on the server just a little while ago, and I was 11 years old when I had wrote my first encryption key. So I've always been around computers and technology, and so this was just one step in that direction.
So does that mean your background in your job and your programming background sort of got you into coding JS8Call as much as your interest in amateur radio?
Yeah, I think so. It kind of bridged the gap there. I've always been kind of a hobbyist programmer as well as a professional programmer, so I've always tried to build apps and try to sell them, did business stuff for a long time, but the ham stuff was most fun. So I set out to kind of really kind of improve FT8 when I got started. When I first started down the ham route, I was playing with JT65 digital mode, and was really fascinated by. I think I had like FT817, a little transceiver, 5 watts, stringing out the window, and could make contacts. And I thought that was fascinating. It was really slow and boring to me, but it was fascinating. Then the WSJTX group announced their FT8 mode, and that blew my mind. That you could take the same information and send it faster using the same power, and everything still worked. I was still able to make contacts. And it was actually just right after they launched, I sent a message to their mailing group, and I said, "Hey, what if we could use those extra bits you talked about, the extra information that's in the payload? What if we could use that to actually just send more messages back to back?" They thought it was interesting and not for them. And so that's when I set off on JS8.
All right. So that sort of leads me into a few of my first questions that I have jotted down here. Let's talk about WSJTX and the FT8 protocol and how it relates to JS8Call. So how much of JS8Call specifically is taken from like WSJTX, or did you like sort of, I can't imagine you reinvented the wheel here, so you must have borrowed some of it and expanded it.
So WSGTX is open source. It's a GPL licensed open source project. You can go down the code. You can modify the code as long as you release the source. Overall, it's a great program. It does what it says on the tin. It's weak signal digital mode for ham radio, and so you can use very low power or a lot of power over a long distance. To connect with other hams. And so I'd probably say more than 50% of JS8 is based on WSJTX. I took the program, their code, and forked it. Went down the modifying it, just really trying to understand its internals and stuff like that. How would I actually make this kind of weak signal but communication mode out of this protocol? And so the first versions of JS8Call were actually really close to FT8. Insofar as I think they contacted me and said, "Hey, you need to change it's called a COSIS array, with the detector detects the signal. You need to change that because it's messing up other FT8 users." So the first versions were actually really, really close. And it's diverged since then. Invented a way to compress the text a little bit differently, changing the speed of the mode so you can send more information with more bandwidth faster, stuff like that. That's kind of improved over time.
So what is JS8Call written in specifically? How many languages? What does it use? What's the basis of it? And presuming that since you forked it from WSJTX, that it's still licensed GPL, correct?
Yeah, it's still GPL licensed, so it's open. You can go and take a look at the code. It's on Bitbucket. Probably put a link somewhere to that. But if you Google it, it'll just it'll take you there. All the code's open source. It's written in primarily C++. The WSGTX program and JS8Call both use the Qt framework for the user interface, and that's in C++. And then there's a section of the decoder that is written in Fortran. That wasn't my choice. That was WSGTX's choice. Since then, I've learned Fortran and can understand it and can write Fortran. Not something I was expecting to learn, but it's been fun to see how that can be applied.
Well, that's interesting that you learned Fortran in 2021 and I learned Fortran in 1987.
It's still around, still cooking, still kicking. That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about FT8. So what have you done to FT8? Have you expanded the protocol or just re-implemented the protocol or used some part of the protocol that gives you the added functionality? How have you done FT8 to make it do what you want in JS8Call?
Totally. So at first it was just FT8, just changing the way that you, the one or two bits that can signal an extra message. But we were thinking, some of the beta testers, when we first were playing around with it, we're thinking, what can we do to make this unique? What can we do to make it not just another, PSK or Olivia or other digital mode that you just send text? And we had been playing with FSQ. That is an FSQ call specifically, and it's that is a digital mode and modulation and protocol for interactive stations and some even automatic responses, and kind of took that and it's like, this is what we could do with FTA. We could use it, just plain text, free text, send whatever message you want. We could also layer on the networking side of interconnected stations. And so that's where we started layering on, changing the protocol, and experimenting with new features. So FT8 mostly is a frequency shift keyed signal. Just sends 8 different tones, and those tones comprise of a payload message, and it's really, you get like 75-ish bits that you can send in one message, and that message in FT8 takes 15 seconds to send. Well, about 12 seconds to send, a few seconds of dead air in between frames. And so what we did with JS8 was change a little way that the message was encoded. It packs a bunch of information, changes a different, basically a packet structure. So there's a little bit of a header. There's you have a structured payload that either embeds the call sign or a specific command or just free text. Similar to FT8, but it's different. The other changes that we took with JS8 was later in later versions was speed it up or slow it down. So JS8 has 4 different modes: slow, normal, fast, and turbo. Each one of those uses a different bandwidth, and so it sends message either slower or faster. Slow is like a 30-second transmission, and ultra is like a 4-second, or turbo is a 4-second transmission. And it uses a larger bandwidth to send that message faster.
All right. That's really interesting. I love how a project can build really successfully on another project. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the operation of JS8Call specifically in a second, but we've sort of got your inspiration for it. We've talked about how you've modified the existing technology to create a different technology that basically, the way I've heard described, is weak signal rag shoe.
Yeah, totally.
So, which is a cool thing. I've only played with it a couple of times. I have noticed that maybe its uptake is not as robust as you'd like, perhaps, but hopefully we can help correct some of that. So let's talk a little bit about the application itself. So what kind of infrastructure do you have to set up to get it? Is it in repos, stuff like that? So how, if someone wants to try out JS8Call, where do they go to do it?
It's at JS8Call.com, links you to a bunch of downloads. We have a distribution for Windows, most up-to-date Debian-based Linux installations, Mac, and Raspberry Pi. So you have an installation file that you can just load it up if you want to go that route. Or you can compile it from scratch. There are instructions. It's not too difficult. Most of it is pretty straightforward. And with a little bit of hand-holding, it's pretty easy to get set up. And that's the most useful case for custom systems, if you wanted to build it on like an ARC or something like that.
Usually the problem with source builds is just having the necessary dependencies, so you'll need like the Qt libraries and stuff like that. But
most of that stuff is in your normal distribution, though, so you can quickly install that and you're off to the races. So once you install the app, what you need is a way to connect your computer to your transceiver, and so you have to have some kind of digital interface. It's very simple if you just have if you can key your rig and send audio out, so via a USB sound card, that's all you need, really. For most installations, that would get you by. I've done a lot of Parks in the Air or field days or something like that with just like a little Elecraft KX2 with connected to like a $7 USB sound card that I bought off Amazon, connected to the computer, and that's enough to get you out.
Very good. And before we get into the next thing, which is going to be like the sort of basic configuration, and I will say that if you're listening to this and you're at all familiar with WSJTX and some of the weak signal applications out there, you'll find yourself right at home with JS8Call. You already sort of know how things work. But you were talking about the protocol and the different speeds, turbo mode, and all that stuff. And we had a question actually because we are streaming this. This is Don KB2YSI. Wanted to know, the way you are able to send in different modes and different speeds and different bandwidths. Are you jumping between different things like FT8 and FT4, or are you doing it a different way?
Yeah, so the software allows you to send in any of those modes, any of the speeds at any time. And the default installation runs a multi-decoder. So it runs decoders for each one of those speeds at the same time. And so you don't have to flip between slow and fast and turbo and normal modes to intercept those signals if you're running the multi-decoder, and that's on by default. So you just load up the app, multi-decoder's on, you can receive a slow signal next to a fast signal without problem.
All right, that's really cool. I love having these little interviews on programs that I'm not really familiar with or don't use very much, because then I always get really interested and have to use them right afterwards.
Great.
So that's exactly what I'll be doing this afternoon. But let's talk a little bit about the basic configuration of JS8Call. So what's like the quick and dirty? How do you get it up and running? What's the minimum you have to do to, once you get it installed, actually get on the air? Once you've got your rig control device. Well, actually, rig control is part of the configuration, so I guess we'll touch a little bit on all of that.
Yeah, definitely. So you set it up, and the first thing you need to do is go into the settings and set your call sign, your grid, similar to how you would in WSJTX. And as long as you have your audio device connected to your computer, you can just go select the audio device from the audio settings that you'd be transmitting or receiving on. And that's it. That's all you actually have to do. For the most part, everything else is extra. If you want to customize the way that your computer controls your rig, you can go and set up, it uses HamLib in the background. So it has a bunch of different radios that it can connect with over USB or serial. And so you can set it up so the software can control the rig. The thing that's important, though, is that you don't actually have to do that. For the most part, most transceivers have a Vox circuit, so you can turn on Vox on your transceiver and hook the mic up to the audio out from the PC, and that's all you need. The most important piece, though, of setting JS8 is that you need a fairly accurate time source. So, internet connected time source or something like that, or GPS dongle. You don't have to have those anything complicated, but for the most part, you need to synchronize your time, similar to how you would with FT8. The cool thing with JS8 is you don't have to do that. There's actually a built-in utility that can just listen to the bandpass for signals, and once it basically tries to decode every second, and once it finds a signal, it'll automatically set the time to that signal. And so then you actually don't need an internet connected time source or anything like that. But it doesn't do that right out of the gate. You need to tell it to do that, essentially.
Yeah, that's one thing we talk about when doing these weak signal modes, is that time is critical, because once you get outside of a certain delay, you'll see drift or be completely unable to decode entirely. So
with JS8, it's about 2 seconds. You need an accurate time source within 2 seconds of a transmission, but that doesn't mean you have to have like an accurate time source to the actual time. It just needs to be within 2 seconds of the transmission, and that transmission could happen at 4 seconds or 6 seconds or 15 seconds or whatever. So that's why we built a utility that's in the app to listen for signals and try to set the time to their basically transmission time.
Oh, that's really neat. That might be something guys over at WSJTX could incorporate. That might.
I asked them if they wanted to, and it's open source, so they can go check it out if they want. That's the cool thing. Like, it would be awesome to be able to contribute some of that back upstream. But sometimes they're not interested.
No, and I understand that completely. But I will say, just from a general computing perspective, especially if you're doing anything with cryptography or encryption or backups or anything like that, just a good, stable, consistent time source is useful, even if you're not doing, critical weak signal work or anything like that. Just have a good, solid clock. All right, so let's talk a little bit about basic operation. One thing I was going to ask you right off the bat, because I was thinking about it a second ago, is this, since this is sort of like a rag chew mode and you're doing this using weak signal protocols, does it have the option of like macros and stuff so you can throw your brag tape in there and all that? Just like, PSK31, stuff like that?
So you have saved messages, so you can dump whatever you want in there and send those pretty easily. There's some configured buttons to send like just a standard reply or your signal to noise ratio or anything like that. Those things are built in. Most people don't use brag tape because it takes a while to send a big long brag tape, and it's more efficient to actually have a conversation.
Right. So even with the idea of this being a mode where you can actually have a conversation as opposed to just giving a signal report and a grid square, you're still sort of limited because you are doing weak signal work. There's a lot of error correction and stuff like that. So you're sort of by definition limited on the amount of data you can send in a reasonable amount of time. But this does give the option of having what would be considered a more natural human conversation.
Yeah, that's right. One of the cool things about the payload itself, it uses I call it adaptive text compression. It has a couple of different algorithms for compressing the text, and one of those is a dictionary-based algorithm, and so it compresses it based on a dictionary of English words. I think the dictionary is like 250,000 words that are stored inside of the program. And so it compresses those pretty small. So if you're actually just normally like typing real sentences with real full words, it actually sends faster than like abbreviations and funky weird character emoji type words because the text compression recognizes that and compresses it better.
All right, that's cool. So I assume that the idea of how you would use this is, it has like the band pre-configured calling frequencies and stuff like that, which are presumably the same as the ones used for WSJTX and stuff.
So it's a couple of kilohertz away from FT8. Most of the bands are configured. I think it's probably +2 to +6 kilohertz away, and so it's not in the same band as FT8 most of the time. We had done that at first, and they were WSJTX complained about that, so we had changed those frequencies. So all that's configured up front. You have all the calling frequencies. It's very easy to get on the air. Most folks in the United States operate on 40 meters or 20 meters. I think that's where you'll find most of the activity. So if you join the groups.io JS8Call group, the mailing list, have a bunch of people who do SCEDs or fun contest type stuff once a month, and even a net every once in a while.
All right. So as far as basic operation, once you get the software installed, you do your initial configuration, whatever tweaking you want to do. Then it's just get on the air, pick a default calling frequency, send out a CQ, whatever, and then have a conversation. Anyone who's had any kind of a conversation, whether it's phone or PSK31 or FT8, will sort of understand how that works. So I guess we don't have to go too deeply into that because it should all be fairly straightforward.
Calling CQ is normal, and you'll get replies most of the time if you're operating in a normal time or a normal band, and on the frequency. If you've used PSK or Olivia or something like that, like those standard conventions for QSO make sense. There are some pre-built messages in JS8, so you can and your signal really fast. You can send your grid really fast if you need to. But for the most part, people will do that, and then they'll continue on with their rag chew.
All right. So my next question, I have a couple of things I might want to ask you specifically about if you don't touch on them, but I'm figuring you will, just because of the nature of JS8Call specifically. So what things can you do in JS8Call? It's an extension of FT8, the protocol, and WSJTX, the software. So what can it do that WSJTX doesn't, other than send longer messages?
Yeah, so there are pre-built messages, like I had said, sending your grid and your signal report and stuff like that, but also some what we call commands. And this is like asking if anybody can hear a particular station, or sending a message and having it stored on a specific station. This is where we get into the networking capability of JS8Call. Many of the stations will run in a kind of semi-automatic mode, where the station will respond to other stations' inquiries. So you could say, if you heard a station on the air, you could ask it your signal report, your signal to noise ratio, or you could store a message at that station and have someone else pick it up, kind of like a mailbox or BBS functionality. So there are a lot of different ways that you can use the software in ways that you wouldn't be able to use even PSK or Olivia, let alone FT8. One of the things that is built in, it's called heartbeating, and that's a periodic transmission that's sent automatically, saying, hey, I'm on the air, this is my station, and this is my grid. And other stations that are also heartbeating will respond to your heartbeat, saying, hey, I can hear you. And it creates this interesting network of stations that can hear each other. And that's displayed in the user interface, so you can see which stations can hear you if you've been heartbeating. You can see which stations they've responded to that you can hear. So then you can also do some really interesting stuff on top of that. Once you know the network path, essentially, like station B hears station C, and I can hear station B, I can send a message to station C through B. So it's a relay functionality built in, saying you can call CQ, you can send a message, you can store a command using that relay functionality to that end station, and station B will pass that message for you if they have that enabled in their software.
Okay, well, I feel good because the 2 bullet points I had after I asked that questions was storing and forwarding and unintended operations. So, so you hit them all. Excellent. So that's stuff you have to enable. It's not enabled by default, I guess. And I was kind of wondering, as far as like the sending messages and that idea of semi-attended or unattended operation, does that work in a way similar to like WinLink, where you're basically forwarding on to somebody's hearing and storing, and then if that station hears the ultimate endpoint, it relays it on? Is that sort of the way it works?
Sometimes, yeah. It's if you're storing a message at another station, they have to be actively heartbeating to forward a notification to the other station that would actually want that message. It doesn't actually forward the message automatically. So it's a little bit different than WinLink, and where WinLink is trying to move the message closer to the intended recipient, where JS8 just holds onto the message until it's retrieved. There's some thought about how we could evolve that in the future to be more or less like WinLink. There's definitely some interesting, FCC US regulation stuff that might change that in the future. We'll have to adapt to that if there are different rules or anything like that. But for the most part, it's at your discretion. You're the operator of the station. If you don't feel comfortable storing other people's messages, it's not on by default. So you can block stations and stuff like that if they're sending you things that you don't want.
All right, very good. And I think you almost touched on my next bullet point here, which was hidden tips and tricks. And you said something a minute ago about building on the functionality of that sort of forward networking and relay operations. So go ahead and expand on that if you would.
Definitely. So JS8Call has an API built in, so it hosts a little TCP or a UDP server from the application, and you can program against it. So inside of the repository, there are a couple of examples, but we have a lot of folks who are experimenting with that right now. Essentially, most of the things you can do in the software, you can do through the API. Send or retrieve a message, change the band, stuff like that. Listen to the band pass and all the activity that's happening on the air. And then you can build your own integration, essentially. Some of the things that people have done, they've connected a script that they're running to GPS to figure out their grid, and then automatically send their grid when it changes as they're on the move. We had people who were like roving. They had their transceiver in the car and their GPS, and they were just plotting their course using JS8, which was pretty neat. I had someone who was attempting to write a game of chess using JS8. So your moves can be encoded in a small text and then transmitted. It's kind of neat. So I think the possibilities are limitless when you think about an open application, but then also an open API. You can build against it, you can extend it, you can build new things on top of it.
Oh, that's fantastic. So anytime I get to someone discussing an API for an application, I always want to know if there is good API documentation, because an API is a wonderful thing, but you have to be able to know how to use it. So where do you find documentation on JS8Call and the API structure and, the methods and things like that you've got built in there? Where would you go to get that?
Yeah, I would say that's probably one of the weakest areas of the documentation, the API docs, mostly because it was evolving for a long period of time. We never really settled on it. So linked from the download, you can go to the JS8Call docs, and there's some basic documentation linked from there. For the most part, that's an area, if you would like to help move JS8Call forward, I would love help writing really great API documentation, because that's something that is lacking right now.
Yeah, and let it be said here that if ever you have a penchant for documentation, you have a job for eternity, because the one thing that
right.
Coders do not want to do is document code. As a coder myself, I know exactly how that is, because you spend all this time putting the code together, and the last thing you want to do is explain what you did. So what about other development in JS8Call? Who's developing it with you? Is it only you? Are you taking polls, or what? How's it as far as future development?
Yeah, so I'm the only software guy, only programmer on it. Do have a small group of beta testers, close contacts that have been with the software since the beginning and help influence its direction. But for the most part, I will accept any pull request or patch that you want to that helps move the program forward, fixes a bug or anything like that. I'm happy for that. That's the great opportunity we have here with open source software, is rallying around as a community. So right now, I'm the only person, but I would love, if anybody's interested, to dig in with you.
All right, fantastic. We'll call that a call for help, just in general. So now we're just about to the time you've allotted us, and I want to let you get on with all the things you have to take care of. But before we let you go, there's two things we need to get to. The first one is one we always ask at the end of an interview, which is, what did we miss? What did we forget to talk about? What's something you want to talk about, even if it's not necessarily about JS8Call, but a hidden feature, a bug, something you want to tell us, or whatever, or just anything you want to say?
Yeah, definitely. Well, JS8Call was a fun journey when I was just getting into ham radio, and really like the the most of the development happened when I was on parental leave with my first daughter. I'd taken some time off of work and spent time programming and dealing with a little baby. What's really cool, at the end of the month, we're expecting our second child. I'm going to take some more time off, and I'm going to probably do some more programming. I actually have a lot of interesting things in the works, so stay tuned. You can head over to JS8Call.com or our Groups.io group mailing list to keep up to date with the things that are happening. But I'm exploring right now a slightly different way to encode the messages and modulate the messages that is more performant than JS8 is today. It's completely different, using some newer technology for forward air correction. So that's something that maybe we'll see in a couple of months. I haven't no plans on specific dates yet, but I'd love to be able to bring even the next layer to the world here soon.
All right, very good. And so Groups.io, the mailing list, and JS8Call, is it JS8Call.com? Is that what it is? Or
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Are there any other places that people would need to go? Do you have any Discords? You're on IRCs, or is there any other way that you would want people to contact you about the program?
You can send me an email. I got kn4crd@gmail.com. I respond to most messages. If you just want to send a personal note my way, that's how you can get at me.
All right, fantastic. And before you go, let's bring in everybody else here. I was trying to figure out how I was going to segue into this, but let me ask Klaus. So Klaus, you and Kuhn and Rich are here for a very specific reason, and we've been talking to Jordan for the last 45 minutes or so. So why are you guys here, and why is Jordan here at the same time?
Because you invited us. No. We would have to go back to and talk about what we actually do. So the Amateur Radio Software Award, we are promoting software projects that enhance and adhere the spirit of amateur radio, projects that are innovative, free, and open. And so the background on that is where I came from. My background has always been with computers, and I was involved with software and also working on open source projects. I didn't come to the amateur radio until December 2016. And one thing that I noticed is amateur radio had a lot of software that were free, but not open. And I was kind of wondering why that is, because the whole open software philosophy kind of fits with the amateur radio. And that's kind of how I got driven to create this software award, the Amateur Radio Software Award. And so we want to celebrate the software projects and the developers that do those software projects that make the software open for anybody. So, for example, JS8Call, for example, is a great example in this. The software would never have gotten up and going if Joe Taylor wouldn't have made FT8 open so that Jordan could go in and see how the software works and build upon that software. So that's really exciting, and that's something that I really want to promote more.
All right, and we're going to talk a bit more here about the Amateur Radio Software Award, but we are here to say, for anybody who doesn't already know, you guys awarded Jordan the 2021 Amateur Radio Software Award for JS8Call, and that's why you guys are here to talk about that, and why he was here to talk about JS8Call. So thanks for that. We're going to roll into talking with the guys from the Amateur Radio Software Award here. So Jordan, if you got to go, now is the time.
Jordan, before you go, Jordan, I want to say again, congratulations for winning the award. And Kuhn and Rich, maybe you want to say that as well.
Congratulations, Jordan. Great job, and thanks for all of the hours you put into it. Really appreciate it.
Yes, really, congratulations. And we deliberated a lot of time to reach that conclusion that we want to award JS8Call for this year's award. So congratulations.
Thanks, folks. I really appreciate it. Definitely exciting, and I love the idea behind the reward and wanting to push open software for ham radio. So I'm glad to be a part of it. Thanks, folks.
All right. Thank you, Jordan. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. And we look forward to everybody giving JS8Call a try and seeing how it goes in the future.
Yes, definitely. Thanks, folks. Take care.
All right. Take care. We're now left with Klaus and Kuhn and Rich of the Amateur Radio Software Award Board Foundation. I don't know. Do you guys have an organization, or is this just a free form thing going on? I'm going to go with Klaus. I'm not going to go with Klaus. I'm going to find out who started this thing.
Actually, Klaus.
Okay. All right. So I was on the right track. So Klaus, you started the Amateur Radio Software Award, which I guess you alluded to earlier. But you've brought on a few other people to talk or to help you, I guess, determine who's going to get these awards. But so let's talk about whether or not this is an organization, foundation. What are you calling this thing, the Amateur Radio Software Award? Is it just a personal, like we're trying to get the information out there about these great software packages? Are you creating something that's more of a structured organization, or I don't know, I guess I'll just let you try and answer that question as best you can from a poorly worded.
Yeah, what we are not is we are not an index of open source software. So we won't list of all the open source software for amateur radio. Instead, we are just celebrating and promoting that amateur radio software is open source. The interesting part, you talked about starting that the whole idea of the Amateur Radio Software Award. That was an idea that I kind of had, as I was mentioning, but the Amateur Radio Software Award didn't get started until I was out on Reddit and bringing up that idea and had some feedback from people, and that's how I met Kuhn, and he was working with me. So Kuhn was there from the beginning, really, on the award.
Yes, I saw Klaus's post on Reddit describing his idea of setting up this software award. So I contacted him and says, sure, I want to be a part of this. I would like to contribute to this award. So that's how we started this one last year. And this year is our second year. And we have Rich joined us the second year for the award. So it started last year, and so who, just so we can get this out of the way, who was the winner of last year's award, the 2020 award, I guess?
Anthony Good was the winner of the 2020 award for his K3NG Arduino CW key.
All right, that sounds like an interesting project, and we should probably touch on that at some point. Klaus did say that you guys are not a repository or a clearinghouse of software applications, but that being said, how do you find the applications that you're going to evaluate for the award?
So we do accept nominations where people can go in and nominate a software and tell us a little bit about that. We definitely appreciate that because none of us knows all of the software. And if people nominate new software, then we get interested and look into it and evaluate that software as well. For example, JS8 is not a software that I have been using JS8 occasionally in the past, but I'm not a hardcore JS8 user.
Do you do any research on your own to try and find software, or do you pick your winner entirely from the nomination process?
We definitely are allowed to bring out our own not our own software, but software that we're using or knowing about it. And so, yeah, there's some research, and we're not just blindly picking the nominated software either. Instead, we go in and see if the software actually applies to the criteria that we have. And also, after that, we evaluate who should be getting the award for this year.
All right, that moves very nicely into my next bullet point, which is what are the qualifications for the software award? What needs to be, other than being nominated or you finding the software, what other qualifications are there that have to be met?
First of all, it has to be amateur radio related. Then we say open source and free. So that means anybody could look at the code and fork the code free means anybody could use the software for free. It doesn't necessarily mean that the software project can't accept donations or so. That's still acceptable. Although we don't do security inspection of the software, we do kind of want software that is non-malicious. And then also we have a no conflict of interest rule, meaning if one of us on the award committee board creates a software, that software is unfortunately excluded.
That's pretty typical. You want to avoid any issue of impropriety by creating software that's nominated for an award and all that. So I certainly realize why anyone would do that. So if somebody has or knows about a great software package and wants to nominate it, how does one do that?
Yes, go to our website, arsaward.com, and there we have a link to awards nomination, and you fill out a form and we will review that. We have the due date for every award is February 1st. So for the 2022 award, you have to submit the nominations by February 1st, 2022. However, you don't have to wait until then. You can nominate those awards. You can nominate the software now already.
Okay, fantastic. So you have basically a year period of nominations up to and including February 1st of the year. And then what date is the award issued for that year?
In the spring, we do that. We don't have a fixed date yet. We are still pretty young. And so we just, on February 1st, we kind of make our cutoff and we evaluate all the software that we have so far. So if there's any other nominations trickling in, that will be for the following year. And then comes in the couple months of evaluating which software fits the rules and which software we think is worthy for the award. And definitely not an easy task to do that.
I imagine so. So the three of you guys, as of 2022 award, Rich, Klaus, and Kuhn, you guys are the ones who decide amongst yourself, deliberating who will be the winner of any award, correct?
That's right.
Rich, way to jump in there. So let me ask this. So you have an award. You've given away two of them. There'll be one announced in 2022, sometime in the spring. So other than an incredible sense of pride and 3 hearty slaps on the back, are there any other prizes for winning the Amateur Radio Software Award?
So this year we award the recipient of the Amateur Radio Software Award $300. So each of us on the committee contribute $100 to the award money. So we send it over. So last year, since there's only 2 of us, we sent $200 award to the recipient of the 2020 award recipient. So that's how we sending out the prize money. Like each of us on the committee contribute $100.
Excellent. Do you guys see that as being the trend going forward, that you being on the board of the Amateur Radio Software Award will sort of pony up the award? Or do you feel like you might branch out into having a sponsor give a prize or something like that? Or is that not on the radar?
That's not on the radar. So the concept right now is that we have the award prize for 2 reasons. One is it since the committee member have to come up with the money of the award, it makes the committee member has a higher buy-in into the award and the whole process. And the other thing is what the award prize also gives is a little bit more than just award that somebody nominates, but there's also something substantial behind the award. So that's kind of the idea of having the award prize.
All right, very good. I like it. I like what you guys are doing here. I like that you're advocating for and actively promoting good software projects that are both open and free. I like the fact that you have both of those qualifications there. Although, for the most part, I've seen that open source applications are also free as in beer when it comes to amateur radio. So you very rarely have to separate those two ideas. Rich, you haven't said much. Is there something you want to say?
You could just feel it, couldn't you? You know, the money is, I see it as a way of giving back because so many people do so many things for amateur radio. And this is just a way, you know, maybe I wouldn't donate. I mean, I don't donate to all the open source projects, you know, that I use, which is in the hundreds probably, because you know, if anyone doesn't know, I'm a full-time Linux user. I'm always looking for, you know, cool and new software, and I love it. I just love the idea of it and the spirit behind it. And it matches so closely with amateur radio being so open, and, you know, we share ideas, whether it's from antennas or making contacts or just whatever. It's just this great community of sharing and giving back. And so this is just in a lot of ways, it's my way of giving back. The prize or grant, we call it sometimes, is just, it's just incentive, and it's a way of saying, we're going to do our due diligence. And I wanted to mention about the selection process and the nominations. I really like it because it means that every year, I'm sure we're going to have, you know, the same 10 projects nominated every year. And they should be, because they're stalwarts, you know, FL Digi, Hamlib, you know, the list could go on. But then you're going to get some new stuff like this JS8Call. I don't know if it showed up last year, Klaus, on the radar.
Yes, it did. And it was up there as well last year.
Yeah, okay. And so this year it came up again. And, you know, I think it was neat with the three of us. We both, you know, our selection process was in a kind of a way where we narrowed it down, and then we talked about the few that were left, and we came to a consensus. And knowing that, you know, the ones that got passed over could potentially be on the radar next year. So yeah, it's just it's a lot of fun, and I'm glad that I jumped on board this year. Go ahead, Russ.
No, I'm glad you did too. I think I really like the idea, and I like what you guys are doing. Are you going to hold the board to 3, or are you looking for active participation in this, or do you have any plans in any direction as far as that goes?
No, we definitely welcome more board member, and we're open for that.
All right. So, and with every additional board member, the prize goes up. Winners would probably be looking forward to that.
Yes, definitely.
I'm going to ask you a question that would put you on the spot, and don't feel that you have to answer it. So, when you came down to choosing JS8Call this year, what was the one you almost picked?
I don't know if we want to talk about that.
Okay, that's why I said
makes kind of bad feelings for the other software projects. Yeah. But there were definitely a lot of good software projects, and it was really hard.
Well, they may win next year. Who knows?
Yeah.
We have a lot of runner-ups, and it took us a lot of time to rethink and think again, and then finally reach the conclusion. This is the one JS8Call we're going to pick this year. So next year will be a next year's thing.
All right. And I don't know where I heard this, but I heard that Klaus has a Morse code trainer. You want to tell us anything about that, Klaus?
Yes, I have an Android app that for Morse code training. I wrote that a couple years ago. That was during the time when I was trying to learn Morse code. Unfortunately, I have a hard time learning Morse code. So great programmer, but not the skills to learn Morse code kind of thing. So what would you like to know about that?
Oh, well, it's an Android application. So are you using, is it in the App Store? I mean, and what's it called?
Yes, it's in the Google's App Store. It's Klaus's Morse code. What was it called? Klaus's Morse code trainer, I think. And it's also open source, so you can check it out on GitHub.
Well, see, I think that's all we need to know. So you just Google for Klaus's Morse code trainer, and if you, like a lot of people, are having trouble learning Morse code, that might be one way to help you out. It's not, I mean, there are quite a few Morse code trainers out there, but everybody learns in a different way, and this might be the fit for you.
Yeah, that program goes by learning Morse code by listening. So it has a list of letters that it plays to you, and then in Morse code, and then it gives you a couple seconds, and it tells you via text-to-speech what letter it was sent. And then you can also do words as well on that. And if you want to, you can create your own text file with words that you would like to learn on that app.
All right, excellent. Well, thanks for telling us about that. And thank you all for telling us about the Amateur Radio Software Award. You guys are looking for additional board members. If anybody wants to participate in this excellent project and the selection process for identifying and awarding excellence in software development for amateur radio in the open source space. Anything else you guys want to touch on before we wrap this one up?
Yes, definitely. Every year we started now to have every year a special event station that we are running for the Amateur Radio Award. And so we did that last year in the summer, and we do this again this year. So on August 27th through September 5th, we will be on the air with 3 call signs. It was Kilo 1 Alpha. Oh, sorry. Yes, Kilo 1 Alpha was last year. Kilo 2 Alpha, and that will be me out of Iowa, and I'll let the other people say what their call signs will be.
Okay, my special event call sign is Kilo 2 Sierra. I'll be running it out of Washington State.
Yeah, I'm Kilo 2 something.
Kilo 2R.
Thank you. I'm Kilo 2R for Rich. No, for radio. And I'm going to be running out of Colorado.
All right, that sounds cool. And what were the dates on that? August to September something?
August 27th through September 5th. And on our website, once it gets closer, we'll be publishing more information about that, and also more exact what times we will be operating and what modes we will be working on. And that website again is arsaward.com.
All right, fantastic. Anything else anybody wants to touch on that I've somehow managed to neglect?
I think you covered everything I can think of so far.
Okay, good. I'm glad I didn't miss too much. So what is the website for the Amateur Radio Software Award where everybody can go to find out more information and get hooked up with being a board member if they decide to?
The best way to remember that is the first letter of the Amateur Radio Software Award, and award is spelled out .com. So arsaward.com.
All right, thank you. Well, thank you guys for being here, and thank you for doing what you do and promoting software. And thanks once again to Jordan, the winner of 2021's Amateur Radio Software Award for JS8Call, for being here and telling us all about his application. I hope everybody participates in all of these things going forward, checks out some Weak Signal Rag Chew and all that. Thanks, guys, for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Russ, for inviting us to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Russ. And 7-3 to all the listeners.
All right, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. And with that, I do actually have a couple bits of feedback. We haven't done feedback in a while, but I do have to get to this, even though I'm here by myself, because we have a voicemail. We haven't had voicemail in forever.
You know, Russ, I had bought some LHS stickers a while back, and my idea was to send one to anyone who gave a voicemail. So if they give their name and call sign, I'll send them a sticker, an LHS podcast sticker.
We have voicemail from Tom, WA2IVD, Whiskey Alpha 2, India Victor Delta. And he sent us some voicemail, so I'm going to go ahead and play that now. And we'll see if there's a question in here that needs to be addressed.
Hey, guys and gal. It's Tom, WA2IVD. Love the show. Been listening to it since back when it was just Russ and Richard. And had a comment about the last couple weekenders where in a couple of the contests you've mentioned green stamps. And I think Bill, I don't know, a few shows ago, he said that made some comment about, don't know that, you know, green stamps haven't been around a long time. And on this and I thought he was just kind of joking around. And on the most recent show, Russ commented about, you know, include a safety and a green stamp or stamp. And it makes me think you guys might not know what the old school slang green stamp means. A green stamp for old school ham QSOing is a U.S. dollar bill. And it's, if you look it up, it's used for direct QSOing with DX stations. A lot of times a DX station will say, If you want me to QSL direct, include a self-addressed stamped envelope and a green stamp, because they like those better than, IRCs, international, I don't know, it's something that you can exchange for postage in any country. Anyway, just wanted to throw that out there. I didn't know if you guys knew that a green stamp was a dollar bill or not, but that's what it means when they're talking about that on the special event stations. Take care. Love the show. Talk soon. Bye.
All right. Well, thanks, Tom, for that voicemail. I think I once upon a time had heard the idea of using green stamp to mean a U.S. dollar bill, but it's not exactly common parlance anymore, at least not in my sphere, so I completely forgot about it. But thanks for that. And we also have a YouTube comment from QuazyCat, QWAZYCAT. He asked the question, or she maybe, how is the OpenRTX project impacted now that OpenGD77 is canceled? And I didn't know how to answer that question, so I went and talked to the OpenRTX team. And Nizzo, IU2KIN, had this response. There is no negative impact from the licensing side, as the only code we derive from OpenGD77 is GPL2V licensed and properly attributed. Looking at other perspectives, we are saddened about the end of that project, as it was inspiring and helpful for us and many others like blind ham operating community who won't have their voice prompts updates. On our side, we'll try our best to welcome the OpenGD77 user base, eventually revisiting our roadmap, but never giving up our core values, open source, community-driven development and experimentation that we are presently expressing with the M17 project. Thanks to QuazyCat for the question over there on YouTube, and for IU2KIN for providing a response to the question direct from the OpenRTX team. And with that brings us down to the end of our program for today, where we talked with the Amateur Radio Software Award Board and Jordan Sherer, KN4CRD of JS8Call. Really appreciate everybody listening and being here and chatting with us in the live chat. We had Don KC9ZMY and Don KB2YSI. Thanks again. Hope you all have a great week, and we'll do it all again next, Thursday, we hope. We'll see how it goes. I will sign off for all of us, since Bill NE4RD and Cheryl W5MOO could not be here. I'm Russ, K5TUX. There's no 7-3 from Bill this time. Oh no, I don't know what to do. Anyway, we'll catch you next time.